Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for coming. For those of you who don't know who I am Mark Daniel. I'm your city manager and also your chief of police. Thanks for attending our information meeting regarding chlorination. Tonight, we've got a number of people here to help you understand what's happening with our water system and why. I'd like to introduce them to you. And on my far right is Tara Von Flew. She's your city finance director. Welcome to my world. To my immediate right, who hasn't left, is Alan Dahlberg. He's your city public works director. Colby Kemp is over here on my rear right. He's the city administrative services director. And Jackie Mills is sitting here in the back. She's our city library director. And in addition to city staff, tonight, Matt Wadlington from Civil West, who is your city engineer of record. And we've got two visitors who've been helping us out quite a bit. Sam Waller from OAWU and Scott Berry, also from OAWU. I would like to give you all an opportunity to ask questions at any time. So don't be bashful about raising your hand and asking questions. Yes.
OAWU.
Oregon Association of Water Utilities.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that. Anyway, I'd like to give you all an opportunity to ask questions anytime. So don't be afraid to interrupt and ask a question. But I do have prepared information so that, in a sense, we can be consistent with providing you the most accurate information possible, especially since tonight's our first meeting. We'll be having a second meeting for those who couldn't attend tonight on Saturday, the 20th at 10 a.m. Back here in the library. So I'd like to explain why we're here tonight. Your water department delivers clean drinking water to over 1,000 residential, commercial, and industrial customers. The source is groundwater from either of our two active wells in the distribution system. The distribution system is comprised of over 20 miles of pipe, nearly 1,000 valves, as well as two reservoirs that total over 1.3 million gallons of storage capacity. As a matter of practice and as required by law, the city of Mount Angel tests its water on a regular basis. This test looks at the health of our water that you receive from your tap at any given time. We publish an annual water quality report that is available on the city's website. The city recently experienced several positive test results for total coliform bacteria. Each time our sampling resulted in a finding of total coliform, we verified our process for sampling and investigated potential sources for the finding. No location for the source of the total coliform bacteria can be found. We can't find anywhere where it's coming into the system. Repeated positive samples of total coliform bacteria have prompted the Oregon Health Authority to require the city to introduce chlorination as a means of correction to its water system. Total coliform bacteria are not harmful and are naturally present in our environment. However, they are an indication that other potentially harmful bacteria may be present. Please note, all test results for the potentially harmful bacteria have and continue to come back negative. Once again, they continue to come back negative. Nothing harmful there. Yes, ma'am.
That bacteria, would that be the cause of my water literally stinking and growing green things on my coffee filter, my water filter, green, mossy looking color, and the smell is disgusting?
I don't know, but let me see if there's somebody else who might be able to.
So a lot of the time, is it a paper filter, a cartridge filter? Is that the type of, like on a refrigerator, water dispenser, or?
It's that heavy paper.
Okay.
And the coffee maker, there's a round one on the bottom. And the water pitchers have plastic tubes, and if you look inside, there's something white, a screen of some sort, and it's always green.
Yeah.
I mean, I change it literally every week now, plus I've been buying all my water out, I'm not using the water even for my animals.
You're changing the filter every week and it's still doing that?
And we just moved in, we heard rather quickly that we better get a water softener. And also an inline filter. Now, I don't understand any of it, but I do have a pipe in the garage, it's plastic, it's about this long, and it is green. And I had someone that had to come in and fix my water heater, and he said that shouldn't be that color.
Yeah, it sounds like you've got a filter in line in somewhere in that process that maybe hasn't been changed in a while, and that's affecting everything downstream of it.
Well, it's a while, I mean, the house is only a year old.
And it just depends on a lot of other factors, how warm it is, where that filter is, so how warm the water can get once it's sitting in those lines for a while. That has a big effect on it, as well as,
That's your clear wearable pipe.
It's, I think so.
Yeah, and it's exposed to sunlight.
No, it's in the garage.
Well, but I mean, is there a window in the garage? Oh, okay, no, usually that's affects the sunlight hitting the.
I mean, that kind of fell into everybody saying, you know, you're gonna have your dishwasher go out, your washer going out because the water here sucks. And it doesn't matter who you talk to, even people from Salem know the water here is bad. So I don't know what to do. I can't afford a $6,000 water softener. I have no clue about these filters, you know, what I'm supposed to do about these inline filters. I mean, it's me, so, you know.
and unfortunately, without knowing more of the specifics of your system in particular, I don't know any more than you do.
Sorry, when we moved in here, almost 10 years ago, we were told the same thing, and due to finances, we couldn't afford any water softeners, and we're glad we did. People we know that did get water softeners said it didn't do what they thought, and it wasn't as good, and it was kind of a waste, and we haven't had any problems, any issues with anything, none whatsoever.
Well, I'm waiting to see, I've had 2 new dishwashers put in and a component put in and all this, and I'm just waiting for Frigidaire to say, it's your water.
Well, Frigidaire, you might also look at that brand. We were shopping and, yeah, people tell us don't get Frigidaire.
It came at the house, I've never owned Frigidaire, so I'm wondering too, but, you know, I have all brand new appliances and.
We were shopping for appliances and we had some renters that were renting houses and they said, well, we don't recommend a Frigidaire. I'm sorry for saying that, but that's what we were told. So
Well, I believe it, because, I mean, we have, next month will be a year, and they replaced it once. They put new computer components in again, and now today it's still doing the same thing. So.
Well, thank you.
that's-
Yeah, we're very well aware. I mean, everybody is very well aware in the community. You know, Mount Angel, and I'm kind of going off script here just a little bit, and my public works director can help me out. You know, we have well water here. And we have very hard well water here. And hardness means minerals. There are minerals in the water. You know, I live in a different community. I have a well myself. My water is very hard. And I've got, you know, contrary to what usually happens here, is even worse over in where I live. And it all depends on the hard water, you know, and what you're able to kind of put up with. But we're not, you know, we're really not talking about water filtration or anything like that, because I do want to have that conversation with the community. In fact, our engineer of record is here. He is working on a water master plan right now for the city of Mount Angel, and trying to plan out what the next 20 years or so is going to look like for our water system. We've heard a lot about the taste of the water. We've heard a lot about the hardness of the water. So in order for you to address those issues, quite honestly, you're talking about millions and millions of dollars. And not only do you have to invest millions and millions of dollars, at least at one location, but for our system currently, how it's built, we have to build a water treatment system at one well, and we have to build a water treatment system at another well, because we have two active wells that feed our water system here for the city of Mount Angel. And the water isn't necessarily the same chemically, with the same amount of minerals coming from one well as it is the other. So you have a blend, if you will, of two different wells and perhaps even two aquifers that come into the system. And it's hard, it's well water. So people who don't enjoy well water aren't going to enjoy Mount Angel water. But we'll be happy to talk more about that with you specifically. And I don't want you to necessarily call out your address or anything like that for privacy reasons. So we'd be happy to meet with you and talk with you further, even beyond the meeting. Yes, ma'am.
Quick question, so who did the water test and who evaluated the water test? I'm assuming the city conducted the test, and I'm wondering who evaluated it. Who conducted the evaluation?
Great question. I'm gonna have Alan talk to you about that.
So I take most of the 99% of the tests. And then I immediately deliver them to Water Lab in Salem. Water Lab, that's the name of the, yeah.
They are who are they affiliated with?
That's the name of the entity as well.
Lab in Salem. They're at 2603 12th Street Southeast.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Mark, one thing I would add too is that the hardness of the water and the minerals in the water are an issue, and it's likely a lot of the cause of what you're experiencing, but it's not associated with the bacteria in the water that Mark was talking about. So these are separate issues.
Does it matter where you live? Like if you live up this way or you live past the railroad tracks and you live over. It doesn't matter
It
east,
shouldn't.
west, north or south, it doesn't
The
matter.
same water.
So you have the same, supposedly the same conditions you're breathing.
The test the coliform positive samples, there's no pattern to them. It's completely random.
Go ahead.
You mentioned earlier two reservoirs.
Yes.
Are you set with the wells, you call the well reservoirs?
So no, we've got two wells and we actually have two reservoirs. We have a small reservoir above a much larger reservoir on the Abbey Hill.
Okay, tank.
Yes,
Where's the other one?
right up above it.
Oh, we're doing there.
Yeah.
Okay. So do we pump water up there and then
We
we
do,
get it back again?
we do.
We don't-
Actually, it would be really nice if in fact that's exactly how it did happen. But actually, each well runs right into the water system itself, which we've done a really good job of trying to loop. So it pressures in and then pressures up to the tank and fills our reservoirs up there.
So we don't have to use the old wood flue anymore.
There's no wood.
Back in the day.
If there's a wood flue,
Yeah.
they haven't included me in on it.
I assume you were.
So I'd just like to kind of bring you up to speed on where we are with our timelines for this implementing of the chlorination plan. So we basically started this in October 2023. That's when Oregon Health Authority sent us a letter requiring the installation of a treatment system, if you will, to maintain a disinfectant residual throughout the distribution system. All that to say, they're the ones who mandated that we chlorinate our water system. In December 2023, we sent out a request for quotes to install an on-site, here's the big term, on-site hypochlorite generation system. All that to say is, when we're going to be introducing chlorine into the system, the chlorine that we are introducing to the system does not come in cylinders. It doesn't come in buckets or anything like that. It's actually generated because of salt. It's a chemical reaction with the salt that occurs at the well site, and then it is introduced into the system versus using some type of chlorine gas, which is highly hazardous. So we're gonna have a naturally creating system, if you will.
And does this produce the, formalization or like the byproducts, like
The disinfection byproducts.
yes. And the TL, the other ones too, that are even more toxic, does it produce both of those byproducts?
So it may require some disinfection byproducts in the future. That's something that'll have to be determined, after this gets rolling for a while.
My understanding is that chlorine it reacts with whatever compounds are in the water, so then you will get some toxic residuals.
Generally, disinfection byproducts are a reaction between the chlorine and organics that are in the water.
Right.
Well water generally doesn't have a lot of organics in it, so there's not a lot for it to react to and create those disinfection byproducts. But the city will have to monitor those and test for those along with their water.
And how fast can you react once those are established, that there is a,
How quickly are those formed?
well, no, how quickly can you react then to correct the problem?
Depending on what it is, there are a number of different ways to treat it. Sometimes it's just doing extra venting, maybe at the reservoirs. Sometimes you have to do more treatment to remove some of those organics. And so it depends on what type of disinfection byproducts you're seeing to see.
Sewage treatment with more chemical treatment.
Not necessarily. It's really a treatment to try and get rid of more organics out of the water. So it could be more filtration, it could be just a higher, just treatment.
And how often are they testing for these reactives?
I'm not sure. I think it would probably be monthly, but I'm not sure what the testing schedule is gonna be.
They're supposed to test them daily. And the reason I have a concern is because there has been shown correlation between cancer, increase, all kinds of immunization or immune system sensitivities, because it does affect your gut a bit, the chlorine in your gut, and then you have some immune system sensitivity stuff going on, and all kinds of stuff, so it's not the best healthy option. And I was wondering if there's even a possibility. Well, I have two questions. One is if there's no evident sign of any unhealthy bacteria in the water, and there's no evident sign of where it's coming from. If you do what you do with a doctor, you could say, okay, I'm gonna go get a different opinion, and then I'll see between these doctors and kind of do what seems best. If we could do that in this case, and then present that to the Oregon Health Authority, somebody who's totally unconnected, in a different, a different entity than this place we got, just to kind of get a fair deal. And then, have we thought of that yet? It is expensive to go through this whole process. We would save ourselves a lot of money and a lot of hospital and doctor bills in the long run and all kinds of stuff, and then having to buy more filtration to get the chlorine out of the water. It just seems like the most prudent thing to do is to get a second opinion.
Well, unfortunately, OHA has already mandated it. And they won't retract it. From what they said, we're gonna be chlorinating indefinitely now.
It seems to me we would have a legal right to say we're getting a second opinion, and we're waiting until that second opinion comes. And I can't see them, but there should be a legal right. There should be somewhere who can say, okay, this is what we're doing.
This was not based on a single test result, though. This was based on a few different results that were showing this. And so it wasn't a single event that you could maybe say, hey, we're gonna retest, try a different lab, different source, but this was tested multiple times and shown that.
Right, that their testing was actually done properly, correctly, who knows what, I don't know. Okay, so that's where we stand. We're not getting a second opinion at this point. Have we thought of, other options than the chlorination, like diatomaceous earth filtration systems?
unfortunately, one of the things that OHA requires is disinfection with a detectable residual, and that's pretty much chlorine. That there really isn't anything else that allows for a detectable residual in distribution.
How many cities around here, Silverton, Woodburn, St. Paul, anyone else doing this, or is this, are we a standout in this?
In some ways, Mount Angel is a standout in that they are a city of some size that hasn't been required to chlorinate before.
So you're saying Silverton does, Woodburn,
I don't know for sure if
Silverton does?
Most cities in the state will chlorinate, especially like you said,
I'm
any
just curious
size.
if
It's
we're.
pretty standard
We're
practice.
one of the bunch.
Yeah, I agree. I think you are, and that you're the largest city I know of that hasn't been chlorinating so far, so. It's,
Well, I can assume when you start this process that you'll get it up and running. And then as you test, you can slowly decrease to get right down to the very minimum.
That's exactly
And
what,
then we let it ride.
that's exactly what we're trying to do.
When does this start, or did you say yet?
I haven't got to that part,
Proceed.
May 15th.
Okay.
Because, and I'll just cut through all the rest of the stuff. Everything I've been reading to you is available on our website. So it's all there. But I'll just kind of cut this up just a little bit. So as I mentioned, we've got two wells, we've got two different systems. And before the meeting started, the question was asked about, didn't we already chlorinate at one point here in Mount Angel? And the answer is yes. There was chlorine in the water at one point. We don't know exactly why it stopped, but it was eventually turned off at some point. We have two wells that are active in town, one on the south end of town called Well 6, one on the north end of town, which is Well 7. Well 7 was the last one that was actually built and put into the ground, if you will. That has a much newer hyperchlorite system actually attached to it. The one on Well 6 had a hyperchlorite system as well, but much older. In fact, when we were looking at the possibility that we were maybe going to have to chlorinate, one of the things I asked our public works director to do was to verify that we have two working systems, because if they say, yes, you're going to have to chlorinate, I'd much rather do this for as little money as possible. So let's figure out what we've got. What we figured out that we had was a very old hyperchlorite system at Well 6 that needed to be replaced. There was no way any company could do anything with it. So it's going to be replaced. Actually, it's going to be replaced, I believe, next week. The system at Well 7 is I won't call it state of the art, but it's still a system that will function quite well for our community. We actually had a provider come out and go through it and make sure that it was going to function properly, and it will. So we don't have to worry necessarily about well number 7. We are having a brand new system installed at Well 6 so that we can draw water from both wells as we do today. And with any luck, like I said, that's going to happen. We'll be turning the switch on May 15th. So back to some of the other things that were actually raised. What is it that you could anticipate? Well, you may experience a smell of chlorine in your water, possible discoloration at first. Discoloration is generally due to iron deposits, hard water, in the distribution system reacting to the chlorine. The amount of iron in our water is not harmful to humans, but is aesthetically unpleasing. To lessen this inconvenience, Public Works has begun a very aggressive water system flushing procedure in March. And we have flushed the system completely twice now in the last several weeks. The city intends to continue to flush the water system for several months after beginning to chlorinate the waters, as the chlorine in the water may actually loosen iron deposits in the water lines. So what we're suggesting is if you notice discolored water, we ask that you run water from an outside hose bib or a bathtub faucet until the discoloration clears up. And Mount Angel residents are pretty familiar with that already, because when we do flushing, we tend to move things around. So the chance is that you're going to get some discolored water in your house or your business. To assist us in flushing the system, we're asking you to do this at your home frequently for the next several months. Since you'll be flushing your pipes more often, and people I understand will be quite concerned about what your water bill is going to look like. Well, we tried to think ahead about that. Then you will be billed an average of your water use for the appropriate month in comparison to the same month last year. Extra water flushed through your water pipes will not be billed. So what you used last year is what you're going to be billed for this year for the next several months, probably through at least August, maybe even into September. We just want to make sure that we flush the system as much as possible and that this doesn't come back on you, because really it is the water system. It's the city's water system, and we need everybody to help us flush the water system. And I don't want you penalized for what we're asking you to do. The city created a special website, as I mentioned, for the chlorination of our water system to keep you informed. You can access that by taking your smartphone up to any of the QR codes which are around here. There's one back here, one over here, which will take you directly to that. And it takes you to our water page. And much thanks to Tara for working on that very diligently and coming up with the QR code.
Is there a link via your city site to that site?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's all a part of the city website.
Okay.
We just created a standalone page just for the water chlorination.
Perfect.
On that webpage, it contains the letter that we received from the Oregon Health Authority mandating the chlorination of the water system. It lists all the timelines, flyers to these meetings, plus an extensive list of FAQs, frequently asked questions. We tried to come up with, we brainstormed the heck out of what questions folks would have. So we tried to list as many of them as we could. And we're certainly open to even more, because when people ask us the questions that aren't on that list, we plan to update the list so that we can get the information out. We want to be as transparent about this as possible because it's your water system. So we've also set up a hotline in case you have questions, concerns, challenges. That phone number is listed on the website, and I can tell you what it is here, but if you want that, and I can give it to you at any time. It will be active Monday through Friday from 8 to 5. You can leave a voicemail after that time. You can also come to City Hall and ask to speak with city staff. Of course, we're open from 9 to 5 at City Hall. And we also have a special email address, which is water@mountangel.gov. That if you wish to send us an email, we'll respond in any manner. We're committed to do this within 24 hours. If we don't, then there's something really wrong. But all of our city staff is committed to communicate and to transparency and to get the information out to you. So that's really all the comments that I wanted to make tonight. I really wanted to leave the rest of the time up to you folks to be able to ask questions of our very knowledgeable panel here, so that we can give you what you need to move forward. So.
Yeah, I have a question. So we have one of those expensive water systems we put in. Mr. Stadley did it for us 2 years ago or something. And when we called him, told him, hey, you know, it looks like we're gonna get this in our system, he was like, oh. So he was kind of surprised about it and said he would probably have to come over and install some kind of a filter to filter out the chlorine, because it would heat up our expensive, whatever, $4,000 system. So he's waiting till you guys start, then he's gonna test the water and then put in some kind of additional filter for us. Have you heard any details about people's water systems?
Do you know any more about what kind of filter it is that you have?
I don't know. All he said was that chlorine with the system we had, it would attack the medium that's inside the tank.
Okay, so yeah, it's probably just an activated carbon filter that they're gonna.
Probably.
No,
Yeah, it'll be a pre-filter before our system.
would look like somebody has some more information back here.
We might have another water expert in.
What you're more than likely gonna have in Mount Angel is a water softener. And so chlorine will break down the resin beads that's inside the water softener, so we're talking to Mark. I was shy of the water system.
Okay.
Just right here in town.
Yeah.
We do a lot of water softeners and carbon filters and stuff like that here in town, so if you put carbon filtration on there, then it will absorb that chlorine, thus not damaging the resin beads that are inside your water softener. So you use a system that uses salt, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it's an ion exchange unit, it's a water softener,
Right,
so pretty common.
okay, thank you very much.
We were worried about, oh, what are we gonna have to do, but
Thank you very much. What are
Well, it
the,
might be good to have that information out for anybody that's in the process of thinking of putting one in, they don't. If they do with the other technology that we have,
yeah,
they'll make it have an issue.
yeah, absolutely. I think that's why our friends from Shiloh are likely here.
And because of everybody having a very, maybe potentially different systems, we can't really address them all. So we just put on our website that you need to talk to whoever installed your system.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah.
I guess I haven't.
that we
read
have been
it.
talking to them,
Perfect.
as soon as we found out.
Yeah.
So, you also mentioned, people helping by flushing the system. How do you get that information out to everyone? Because there's a lot of people who don't go to the city.
Today we started mailing a letter out to every
Oh,
water user. And you'll see on one side it's English, the other side is Spanish.
okay.
We'll be happy to translate it in any other languages that we find necessary to do that. And it's all listed there and it's all listed on the website. City staff is ready to go. I feel really good about it. I think it's the best thing that we've done in a long time. Like I mentioned, our system's pretty well looped, but there are some dead end areas where the water pipe just kind of goes down to the end of the street and that's where it stops. Well, we're gonna be working with those people that live on those dead end areas to do a little bit more flushing. Like I said, they're not gonna be billed for it.
Because we just wondered, how you get the information out, like Gordy's 95-year-old mother doesn't do internet,
We're sending actually letters by way of snail mail. US Postal Service.
I didn't know about any of this was the blue sheet that comes in the newspaper.
Oh,
I mean, I thought to myself, why didn't the letter come?
it's
Snail mail still works for me,
coming.
but it's kind of behind.
Well, we had to take it through our attorney and go through a process in order to get it, so that we could get it out.
Yeah. I mean, we've done Facebook, we've done social media, we've done our newsletter, we've tried to hit as many things as possible.
Yeah, I read it on Instagram.
In fact, when we first started talking about total coliform bacteria, the Our Town paper did a pretty extensive story about that. And started talking about the fact that we're likely gonna have to chlorinate our water system.
Did the Oregon Health Authority mention why we needed to have the residuals in our water in terms of using a disinfectant that created residuals?
But
Yeah, so if there's no residual in the system, then you can't really tell if everything's sterilized or disinfected. So if you maintain a small residual, then you know that chlorine has not been taken up by the bacteria and the iron and everything that's in there. If that makes sense. Can you guys explain a little better?
Yeah, so
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you were to disinfect with UV or something, you could clean the water, but the water coming out of the well is already clean and there's not any issues there. It's out in the lines that you need that residual to actually disinfect what's in the lines. So it's not necessarily the water coming out of the ground. It's good and clean. It's just there's bacteria forming in the lines and that's where they need the disinfectant.
And what they're measuring is the free chlorine residual, which means it's enough chlorine has been added to achieve disinfection and there's just a little bit left over. So that's the free chlorine residual that's being tested.
And there's no other way to address the lines, it's that critical to do it. I mean, is it really a critical issue that it's, I'm just really trying to get an understanding of this, because sometimes it feels like sometimes bureaucracy doesn't always understand all the ins and outs, and obviously I'm learning. I'm not trying to say I know everything, but if there's a way to put our heads together to find a more healthy alternative, then why not be open to at least discussing it?
Well, and once OHA has made their determination, and that determination is based on two total coliform positive samples in a 12-month rolling average time span, there's not a whole lot you can do to back them off of doing something. And the specific rules state that you have to maintain residual. You have to maintain a residual in distribution, and that pretty much spells out chlorine. There's really no other method of disinfection that allows for that residual.
And just so you guys understand kind of the amount of chlorine that's getting used, the state has you know, the highest that the city can chlorinate is 4 milligrams per liter in their water. Most cities don't go over 2 milligrams per liter. 2 milligrams per liter is when you start getting a chlorine smell. What we're proposing is starting with 0.5 milligram per liter. And then, like you mentioned, kind of tuning that until we can just barely get that residual in the far reaches of the system. So we're really trying to just use the smallest amount possible.
Once we start the process, it's gonna take some time to saturate the infrastructure to the distribution lines, because we are gonna be dosing it so small. So it is gonna take a while to reach every point in the system.
So if you start May 15th, when do you think that saturation point would be? A week later, 4 weeks later?
And I'm thinking at least a month.
Yeah, and it all depends on the amount of flushing that occurs after the chlorination starts. So, yeah, it could be quite a while.
We really do want to flush out as much of the residual stuff that's just hanging around in the pipes. You know, any of the iron deposits and that type of stuff. We're trying to get as much out of the system as we possibly can. In fact, Alan just did water samples when this last week.
I believe it was Friday.
Friday. And the results of that were all clean. So there was no hits, if you will, of total coliform bacteria in that sampling. In fact, the water system, when they were opening up the hydrants and flushing it, they only had one area that had a slight discoloration. So that means we're getting a lot of stuff out of the system. And we're gonna try real hard to make that as clean as possible. Yes.
I have a couple of questions. Do they look like the fridge filters will filter out chlorine?
A fridge filter that has an activated carbon filter in it will get rid of the chlorine. Oh, any activated carbon, like the Brita filters or any of those, that's pretty much what they do, is just deactivate chlorine.
And then will this like damage our lawns / plants?
No.
No, I live down at Albany and the water's chlorinated, and I think generally by the time it gets to us, it's a close to a 1 milligram per liter. And we all water the lawns, and it's just fine.
Yeah, in fact, the only thing I've heard it having any effect on is fish tanks. And the pet stores sell the little droplets that you put in there to get rid of it, so.
Well, it also turns blonde hair green. I'll tell you that firsthand.
But-
Well, you're probably talking like a swimming pool.
Yeah.
That doses chlorine quite a bit higher than we're talking about in drinking water. So.
Because I lived in a city where we could smell it, and I would call them all the time. I'd call the water company and say, why is there so much chlorine in the water? Oh, well, I guess we need to tone it back or whatever. And I said, besides that, my hair's green. So it's not just swimming pool. You know, and then of course, all the stuff that's coming out, you're talking about flushing, the rust, it's all going on our bodies and in our hair.
Any more questions? Pat?
So you just flushed it just recently, like,
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, because our water turned brown again. And there were a few units in the apartment that kind of went, you know, they didn't know what to do, but, and so that's why, so every time we get this flush, we get brown water.
Generally, what happens when they're flushing it is they're opening up a fire hydrant and pushing a whole lot more water through those pipes. So the velocity in the pipes goes up quite a bit. So instead of cruising along at 1 inch per minute, it goes up to 5 feet per second. And so it's just blasting through there and pulling a lot of that stuff off from the pipe. So after they flush, you might get momentary that coloration, but hopefully it reduces the more they flush, the less that happens.
It wasn't that bad. I mean, it was bad, but it wasn't that bad. And it didn't last a long time, but there were times where it was frightening, but
Just this last month.
no, it was like last year.
Yeah, this month, we got quite a bit out, especially by flushing it twice, back to back. So if you do notice,
Yeah,
you know, discolored water, just run your bathtub
it
until
just
it
kind
clears.
of freaks you out because it looks like diarrhea, but. And I know why you're going back.
It's just water. Just the water.
The other question is if you do find something odd that's in the water, how long was the timeline of correcting and getting it to the, you know, out to the resident? I mean, is there a timeline where you say, oh, within 3 hours or within 6 hours or 24 hours?
If we discovered something odd that we needed to notify residents of the city, we can send that out immediately. We can either do reverse 911, we can do Everbridge. Hopefully everybody signs up for Everbridge, because then our dispatch center and Oregon Emergency Management will be able to send you an emergency message right away on your phone, on your landline, almost anywhere. We can put it on our Facebook page, we can do it on email, we can do it a variety of different ways. But you know, if we have to, we'll go door to door.
What are you saying? Everbridge?
Everbridge, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So this said October 2023 is when the letter came out with really change and meeting that we implement the system. Is there a certain level that's kind of the presence of coliform bacteria that kind of makes that happen, or has there been present like in a smaller amounts for like the last 12 months or anybody?
Well, it's been, like I tried to explain, and I don't know, I'm not sure I did a really good job. He kind of hit the nail right on the head. There was basically 2 tests that resulted with a hit. And it's not, and a hit isn't a large amount, because if you look at the water samples that they take, they're absolutely clear. I mean, I've looked at the water samples before they go to the water lab. And we're talking about microscopic, you know, examination, and they're finding this total coliform bacteria present. And so there was 2 times in a row, if you will, which then caused us to go into this system, into this thing we're in right now. I find it hard to say exactly what I mean, but going down this road to chlorination, you know. And so there's no minimum or maximum amount that they detected.
In fact, the state mandates when you send a sample into the lab, it's a pass fail. It's an absent or present. So there is no acceptable amount of bacteria other than to say that coliform bacteria in and of itself is not harmful. It's something that we all have in our bodies all the time. It's used as an indicator organism, meaning that if that can survive in the water, they need to look a little bit deeper, which is the reason for once you're notified of a positive coliform sample, within 24 hours, you have to submit another sample from that originally affected site, one from upstream, one from downstream, and a triggered sample from the source that was supplying that area. So, and if any one of those comes back positive, that's when you have to start doing what we're doing here.
And I want to say that, you know, our public works crew have done an amazing job cleaning the source off. You know, they generally take it from like hose bibs in different places around town, right? Well, making sure that all the residual dirt is off. They sterilize it. They sterilize it like twice or three different ways. And do it extensively, spend a lot of time there before they actually fill the bottle and take a water sample. And that's been really frustrating for Alan and the crew because we can't figure out where this stuff is coming from in the system. It just happens to exist in the pipes. And there's an awful lot of old water pipes in our system. There's a lot of water pipes that haven't been taken care of. And that's why we're trying to give as much attention to this as we possibly can. When I took over as city manager and I appointed my friend here to the right as our public works director, that's one of the things I really wanted to do is, you know, try and do what we can to the water system. That's our number one, you know, most visible utility that the city provides to the citizens of Mount Angel. And to do what we can to try and improve it. That's why it's the number one plan that we've got our engineer working on right now, looking at the future so that we as a community can figure out what it's going to look like in the next 20 years. What do we really need to do? Well, I know right now we need to chlorinate the water system because we're under a mandate, but what do we need to do is in the future? And a lot of that's going to come down to you folks and your input, you know, because you're the ones who are going to pay for it. And as I mentioned before, water filtration and treatment is not cheap. There's so many communities right now that are trying to go down that road. And even going out for grants and that type of thing is very, very difficult to find the amount of money that you really need to be able to build the appropriate system. And the real major challenge here that I've learned is that we have two systems to build. And maybe there's other options, other ways that we can pipe into one system, but even those costs are going to be pretty astronomical. So trying to do the best we can with what we got, but then also plan for the future so that we can really take a strategic look at this and plan it out is what we really need to do. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm wondering, if we're trying to figure out where this chloroform is coming from, that must mean that we have the ability to test where it's coming from, I'm assuming, or we have to send it out.
Like Mark was saying earlier, we have no ability to actually be able to detect where it's coming in.
So we can't do our own tests, we have to send them somewhere else and they do all the testing for us.
Yeah, it's the routine water samples we send out to Water Lab in Salem.
What's that?
Is there a reason, I think it might be the same, is there a reason why we have to send it to a specific place? I mean, are they the guru of waters or something?
So that's a good question. And I guess the most simple answer is unless you want to drive to Corvallis, they're the closest ones. And they are a state accredited lab with a fantastic reputation in the industry as an unbiased, non-partial judge. All they're doing is taking in water samples from all of the water systems in the area, wastewater systems too, as well as private industry. They've got a great reputation. I really can't say anything. Yes.
I would be happy to speak to that. You can get a coliform indicator test, which is usually about 90 to 95% accurate. Labs have pieces of equipment that are hundreds of thousands of dollars that pull apart every molecule of the water to give you a positive or a negative coliform. So that's why we took it to the lab.
It's what they specialize in, the
Yeah.
instrumentation, it's unbelievable, right?
Right.
That's what Dallas and their report, you guys look them up, they have a stellar reputation, they're wildly respected throughout the industry, and and in water, so.
And as far as compliance samples for staying in compliance with Oregon Health Authority, it has to go to a state accredited lab, and that's.
Yep.
Yes,
Just to have like more transparency, and as it was talked specifically to the neighborhoods that have kind of poor plumbing and flushing. Can you talk about like what neighborhoods, maybe not direct addresses, but where those trouble areas are?
The dead end lines.
Well,
is that what you're talking about, the dead end lines that I was referring to?
one that comes to mind is South Purging. There's no hydrant at the end of that. So the homeowners down at that end are probably gonna have to flush a little bit more just to pull that chlorine in. And Public Works can also go down there and pull meters off and flush from the meters. Yeah, Maple Court is another one. Without looking at the map right now, I'm kind of going blank, but those are the ones that stick out to me. Another one is East Markham, the very end of East Markham, past Alder.
Mark, did you put something in your letter about homeowners that are being asked to do flushing, how much flushing they're gonna be doing? I mean, are you talking about running a faucet for an extra 15 minutes?
I didn't give them any specific guidance,
Okay.
because just made sure that folks were aware of that. From talking with Alan and trying to come up with our own plans, it is Public Works plan to go out and contact those customers and make sure that they understand how much they're going to need to do that in order to help us out with this project.
So we're each gonna be told how much water to run?
We're not gonna tell you how much water to run. No, we're asking you to run as much water as you need to make sure that you've got clear water coming out of your pipes.
To do it.
Correct.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah, you're gonna be naturally flushing your system when you wash your laundry, when you run your dishwasher, when you cook, right? But then when you see discolored water, we're asking you to just clear out your system. And we don't want to charge you for that. And that may happen more often, possibly.
Because she said she had groundwater, and I hate had ground. I just have smelly water that grows green stuff in my Brita.
I'm sorry, can I ask, what's it smell like? Is it like rotten eggs or
No,
sulfur?
No, it's not chemical.
Swampy, earthy, musty.
Yes,
So almost always that comes back to a dirty cartridge filter.
but I'm changing the filters constantly. When I found the grain, I started doing it weekly. Because it freaked me out so bad. And it's down in the Brita pitchers. And it's hard to get out. And it's in the coffee maker too.
I don't know the situation, man, but, in my experience, normally that comes from a cartridge filter. I just had a customer that got really sick and somebody had a cartridge filter underneath the house. And it was extremely debilitating. So it could be something like that. Come out and test on site, check something for that, but really I would recommend having a professional out there and just have them test the water. And they were just talking about Statly, any of the other local water companies, typically do free estimates and do a mineralogy. So I would maybe recommend that if you've got that kind of stuff going on.
thank you. Anything else?
So I'm playing devil's advocate tonight. So would it be worth driving the how many miles just to get a second opinion on somebody else's testing equipment? Not in any way judging the one company. I mean, it's an awful lot of money, an awful lot of trouble, an awful lot of everything we're going through in case maybe we get a second opinion. Guess what, you know?
Well, the Oregon Health Authorities already give us the mandate.
And again, that second opinion is already kind of built in with not only the original routine coliform test, but then the subsequent repeats, the three distribution and one from the source that are essentially,
But the same company though.
sure.
Let's think, it's,
Did they all come out with the exact same failure as the very first one? Or did you have a failure, your repeats, some of your repeats are good? Are they?
So that's a good question. So for every test that fails, I have to retest at the sample station, and then I got to test upstream and then downstream. And typically those upstream and downstreams come from houses off of hose bibs. More times than not, they all three came back bad. Usually, the test site would definitely come back bad. Every once in a while, the downstream would come back negative and the upstream would come back positive. It was pretty random.
Yeah, random, okay. I like some of the, I mean, testing can be very sensitive, yeah.
and like I mentioned, he just did a test of our water just this last week, and they were all clean. There was nothing that was detected at all. And they're not going to take it back. I would love to stop this process. Trust me, I have had more sleepless nights and worrying about this whole process than you can ever imagine. And I wish I could reverse it, but I can't. Yeah,
So
go
there
ahead.
weren't any hearing rights then?
I'm sorry.
There weren't any hearing rights with that notice, because usually the state has hearing rights for a lot of things.
Yeah, not necessarily in this. Yeah. Once OHA has decided on a course of action, that's the course we're taking.
And when was the letter dated? Sorry, I haven't seen it on the website.
Well, it's attached to a link, so I don't know. I don't remember what date.
Yeah, it was in October, but yeah.
Yeah, you could definitely go on the website and. I was gonna say, where's my phone? I'll just.
I'll look it up.
Dated. October 17th, 2023. Happy birthday.
Anything else? Well, we really thank you all for coming. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you for your questions. We really appreciate it. We will continue to put out information when we learn new things. And we will endeavor to do this as right as we possibly can. As you can see, I've engaged many people from the outside to help us because there isn't necessarily just one way to do this, but I'm going to engage the experts and people who've been working in the industry for years to help guide us through this. So I hope you'll have as much faith in them as I do. So thanks for coming.
Thank you.